As Cotter states in his Harvard article titled Accelerate, organizations need both a network and a hierarchy to run the show. They have complementary strengths, and if organized properly, work together to produce results that are far greater than what either can achieve on their own. CBS and Global exist as television networks that both host the reality show Survivor, a show whose plot is based solely on networks and hierarchies. Forbes editor Kashmir Hill compares Survivor to a sports game. We are all watching to see how people meet challenges, what strategies are made, and who comes out on top. We are watching the networks and the hierarchies take place. It is the perfect example of the two working in unison to drive success. Networks are made up of a set of actors called nodes, and the relationships between them called ties. Survivor has a network like one in the 18th century, one that Ferguson calls a Freemasonry network, one that allows the flow of conversation to happen between people of all rank, religion, and status, one that is also based on building relationships of similar strength and strategy, motivated by homophilia. I will use what Christakis and Fowler call social network analysis to analyze the show. To begin, the teams organized in Survivor are referred to as tribes, which is what Ferguson claims to be what hierarchies first began as, tribes with centralized leadership. These two tribes are formed intentionally for the purpose of the show. But what emerged from this split is the more organic and spontaneous networks within each tribe. The self-organizing of internal alliances and positions for challenges, the collective action to win, and the distributed power to decide who to vote off. The two fundamental features of any social network are at play here, connection and contagion. The spread of information, whether real or fake, is easily done through the small networks on Survivor, similar to what Christakis and Fowler describe as the telephone tree. If Boston Rob finds an immunity idol and tells Amber and Johnny, Amber then tells Cindy and Ewell, and Johnny tells Mark, and so on and so on. These hyperdyadic ties are in full force. But what if Boston Rob faked having the idol to save himself? For Boston Rob to make this message go viral through contagion, he needed to position himself central in his network. He needed to have real connections between other nodes to then influence them. For influencing someone, Boston Rob would have had to create numerous strong and weak ties, as in alliances with teammates, to see him as trustworthy. Christakis and Fowler state that having better connected friends literally moves you away from the edges, which in this case is the chopping block for being voted off. Hierarchies were created to develop predictability. It's obvious through the popularity of reality TV that they excel at keeping the ball rolling. If Survivor had just networks, the incentive for the win and the $1 million would kind of be gone. That being said, if Survivor lacked networks, the TV show would be boring due to no strategy, no twists, no relationships, and no backstabs. It is the ties that make each season of Survivor interesting, despite having aired on TV for about 22 years now. Grano Vetlard proposes dimensions that may affect ties in any given network. These are the duration of the relationship, the intensity of the communication in the relationship, and the services that the nodes of the relationship provide to one another. Although the networks on Survivor are small, their ties are extremely dynamic and are formed quickly, strongly, and strategically. They need to be. Ferguson states that any small change in a network can bring about radical change in a network's behavior. This is where the show keeps viewers on their toes. Boston Rob claims to be in an alliance with Johnny, but backstabs him at tribal council, and Johnny is then voted off. The whole tribe now must rearrange, and the ties each member has with Boston Rob may be strengthened or shaken up. Strategy in Survivor closely resembles the building blocks of ties, centrality, and transitivity in any given network. Let's say Boston Rob wins Survivor Season 8, which he does. What may have gone into that? First, centrality. A good spot for Boston Rob to be is central. In Christakis and Fowler terms, the greater centrality, the greater chance of reward. In this case, $1 million. But his centrality will vary over the course of the show as the networks change and adapt. This is where ties come in. Both weak ties and strong ties are vital in Survivor. If you are focusing too much on strong ties, you may miss out on the weaker ties, which exist as an opportunity to connect with people down the line, rather than the dense clustering of the close ones. In a game where you need multiple and majority votes to win, The weaker ties should probably be closely paid attention to. Then we have alliances, which exist as dyads and triads and so on. In an alliance, you would choose a strategy based on either low transitivity or high. Would you want others to know your plan, or would you want to play a game with a wide variety of options? Importance of transitivity comes into play when the two tribes merge, or when new tribes are formed, and each tribe member has already formed ties with members in their past networks. Here is where social network potential comes in, a term coined by Gertzley. This is a way to measure the size of Boston Rob's social network and his ability to influence it. It is clear that Boston Rob has a high social network potential through his abilities to build relationships, play a strategic game, and win. Hierarchies in Survivor exist through the coordination and construction of the game itself, as all tribe members are ultimately reaching for the top. Whenever people come together to achieve common objectives, there will always be different levels. How individuals come to Survivor varies, of course, but the overall existence of networks on the show is what fills the bridges that you cannot fill individually to get to the top. In Survivor, this is evident through team challenges and creating alliances to avoid getting voted off. In the end, to win, you must have a mix of hierarchical influence and network ties. A drive to be on top, but also the ability to create ties along the way to secure the votes. Like Boston Rob, you need a high social network potential to succeed.